Hey everyone, and welcome. I am thrilled this morning to have the lovely Tina Canton of Tinderbox Sports Horses. That's quite a tongue twister when you actually
It
try and
is,
say
I
it,
know.
isn't it?
And when my married name was Tina Trundle, so that was even worse.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad it's not that now because I wouldn't have been
No.
able to say that. Anyway, thank you so much, Tina, for joining us this morning. If anyone wants to ask any questions, please do put them in the comments and we can ask them to Tina. But welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Tina, and what it is that you do and what Tinderbox is.
Okay, Tinderbox sort of grew a bit organically, really. I've been doing it for 30 years now. Didn't fully intend for it to be a business. Sort of mum and dad, bless them, moved to a bigger property with stables. I had two horses that I was chasing around the countryside to do on livery in two different yards. And basically, mum wanted a bigger garden and dad wanted, somewhere to squirrel all the tat that he seems to collect. So they bought the Tinderbox, and then I had friends sort of asking me, I was going through college and university at the time, could they keep their horse with me? So it sort of organically grew, and we did start as a DIY yard. I trained very young to be a coach. I was a AI by the time I was 18, and I was an II by the time I was 19. So I was always going to go down that line. And then we sort of grew. I got my first owners by the time I was 18. And then it sort of grew, and we sort of developed on now where we offer schooling livery, sales livery, which is actually something that's quite tricky to do. Whether I will do that long term, I'm not sure because it's such a difficult climate. And I compete for owners, and I produce my own horses as well as coaching.
Cool. Okay. So tell us then about your own riding and coaching journey a little bit, because I think one of the main things we'll probably talk about today is owners, because you've got so much experience of riding for owners.
Yeah.
But before we get on to that, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. So you're an eventer. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I'm an eventer. I love producing my young horses. I don't do the breaking side of it. I made a decision many, many years ago that actually that wasn't my forte, and I was much better at taking them from just being sat on and walk, trot, canter, to then teaching them to jump, taking them to their first shows, and I just adore that process. And I probably will turn my career around to doing more of that long term. I have evented up to 4-star level. In my youth, I was ambitious and I wanted to go to the top. But now I've had a lovely time producing quite a lot of horses up to advanced, but I don't want to jump early in badminton, it's far too big. So I'm happy producing up to that level. I currently have my own horse, which is he's advanced, but he's a really, really good 3-star horse. So I probably will keep him at 3-star and do some more challenging 3-star courses with him because we have great fun. And I think that's something I've had to relearn how to discover to have fun, having had a lot of pressure from owners over the years to push horses on and up when they weren't necessarily ready. And I think owners forget a lot of the time with eventing, it's your life at stake. So sometimes their competitive spirit can overtake welfare issues and your own safety. So actually, I'm really enjoying eventing at that level for myself now. But I still do compete for owners, but a lot of the time we have them in to compete to get 4 months for them to be sold. So obviously the internet puts a lot of pressure on you for that as well. Coaching wise, I love teaching. I have to say, I always have. I did, and actually I met Jenny doing the Centre 10 program, which must have been, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And that really reignited my love for coaching. I achieved my bucket list. I got my BHSI in my 30s, which I was very excited about. But then it's very easy to tread water and to slightly lose a bit of self-motivation. So that's really, really helped me on my coaching journey, I have to say.
And what would you say has changed in those last few years then to get that motivation to get, because you sound now so much clearer on what it is that you want than you did when I first met you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I think there was, as a competitive person, you do push yourself. And I think there's always a level of frustration when you don't necessarily feel you're achieving what you should be achieving. But you put those limits on yourself. And I very much post injury, I had a very big injury 5 years ago. And we weren't sure whether I was going to ride again. So I think everything since then has been a bonus. And actually, I think I'm riding. I wish I could ride now, like in my 20s, how I ride now, but that's age, isn't it? So actually, I've sort of learned to enjoy it again, and I've also learned that it's not the be all and end all to be push, push, push.
So what is it about then? If it's not the be all and end all to be push, 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 what is it about?
Enjoying the journey, I think, is a big thing. I think wanting to get up and go to work on a day-to-day basis is very good. The other thing that's changed, I've got two very good coaches now who mentor me, but if you like, in my riding, which is something in the past I probably haven't had the consistency of. I think I did do quite a lot of work with Jenny. Probably, I think, what was it, 2 years ago, Jenny? We worked together from a business as well as my mindset point of view, but a business point of view. So I'm probably a little bit more, I value my services now, and I am willing not to do people favors, because they always say, oh, what will you do for cash? And, oh, but it's a lovely horse, will you ride it for less? So I won't do that anymore. I diversified my business quite a lot. I've always been a bit like that. I don't put all my eggs in one basket. So I also run a lorry hire business on the side. With Jenny's help, I started doing camps, which were very successful last year. Obviously, with COVID, we haven't been able to do them this year, but I've got lots of ideas bubbling away as to what we're going to do next year, and if we're still in the same boat, how I can adapt. So yeah, and I think I've also, as well as juggling all of that, I'm a university lecturer. And I know with the university job, sometimes I knew I couldn't do it to my best of my ability because I had so many balls in the air. But I've managed now to tweak my job, if you like, that it's very, very doable for me. So that's almost taken a lot of relief off from the point of view of prep work and marking. So my university role now is what I'd almost call a little bit more reactive, looking after placement students, teaching the riding school, doing loads of practicals. So it's stuff that I can do easily. I obviously have to prep it and make sure it's to degree level, but it's stuff that then doesn't take me hours to write and sort of have to tweak and deliver. So that's helped me a lot, I have to say.
And what do you think's been the thing that's helped you to get that clarity? Because you now sound really clear on what you want, how you get in there. You've got what we call a portfolio, which is a really great way of doing things, lots of different things, because I think COVID taught a lot of people that all your eggs in one basket isn't great.
Oh, and I loved lockdown. I loved painting on my show jumps. It was very therapeutic.
Yes, right, didn't it? Yeah, lots of lovely pictures of very brightly painted jumps coming through during... Yeah,
I get very upset if anybody hits a pole on 2 levels now.
Right, so is that it? So go and jump with Tina, and you will make sure you jump without getting the poles.
She painted them. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So what is it though that's driven that change for you? Because there's something more to it than just, well, I've decided to do some other other things or concentrate.
I think I am ambitious because I love doing new things. I love having a challenge. I'm not very good at doing the same thing day in, day out. I don't want to live in Groundhog Day. But I think my ambitions have probably changed a bit with age. I think it's more about having happy horses, happy clients, feeling like everyone's moving in the same direction, and feeling like I can grow the different elements of my businesses and react to the market a little bit. I get probably now more it sounds really bad, isn't it? More satisfaction thinking up a new idea and seeing it through and seeing it work and it actually earning me money than probably going jumping around a big track. Whereas in the past, I would have absolutely killed myself and bankrupted myself to be able to go and say I jumped the advanced at Belton or whatever. Now I'm much more excited about, I've got a new format for my camps. I'm gonna have a little play with that, or I am actually in the process of creating an app with another coach. And that's quite exciting because we sort of are designing what we want it to do and how we want it to work. And, that's really quite exciting because then it's a little bit looking towards the long term because I'm heading towards 50. So, I've got to do more than have a jolly time playing ponies, haven't I?
Yeah, and that's so true. I think, when you're young and ambitious, it's all about end goal, isn't it? It's all about like you say, about the riding, about the product goal, about have I jumped the 4-star, the 5-star track, the kind of the
that's a little bit status as well. That's a little bit,
yeah.
You put yourself up on that pedestal and it's a very wobbly old pedestal.
It is, isn't it?
You know, and I sort of, in hindsight, I look back that I probably have sacrificed, sorry, ex-boyfriends, quite a few relationships, being, and husbands. Well, no, actually, we won't go there. I've probably sacrificed quite a few relationships because I've been so single-minded and a complete workaholic. Whereas now I actually put much more fun stuff in the diary. I go and do experience days with friends and spas, and, you know, just go and have a nice boozy lunch with a friend. And I really look forward to those things. Whereas probably in the past, I'd have looked at them as a bit of an, oh, that's a pain, that's in the diary, because I could have gone and done this. So I am definitely changing. Life balance is coming in a little bit more.
Yeah, and that does happen as you I don't want to say get older as in you
well, yeah, no, it's true,
but as in as you get older, like than you were in your 20s. That does happen because you know, your mindset changes to different things that are important to you. So often it does start off in your sort of your 20s. It's about status, it's about career, it's about you know, like really driving to get to the top and success and all that kind of stuff. Into your 30s, it tends to go more into family relationship type areas. In your 40s, it then tends to head a little bit more into security, financial security, stability, that kind of stuff. And then in your 50s, it funnily enough starts turning to like fun. You know, like actually, what can I do to enjoy what I've just spent all those years working for?
Yes,
and actually, it's a well-known pattern that people go through. But I think what's interesting is getting people to realize in their 20s that this pattern is going to occur, and actually, do they want the bit in the middle, or should we just head for the end game now?
Yes, yeah. And I really wish I had worked on a psychological level earlier in my career. I probably would have been a more balanced 20 and 30-year-old, you know, rather than sort of riding roughshod to get to an end goal and not caring what happened in the process. You know, probably would have been a much healthier, happier way to live.
So on that note, what advice would you give to someone who's kind of in their, you know, early stage of their career, who's like going for it, that single-mindedness? Because actually, if you want to reach the top, you need to have the single-mindedness.
You absolutely have. You have to be so dedicated, but you have to have a sense of perspective. I think we in our industry are very insular because of how we are. We live in our home stables, we deal with our customers, and we go to a field and we deal with our, you know, peers when we're competing. So our world is very small. And I think sort of associating with being friends with people who can give you an external perspective of the real world to a certain extent is very good. You know, because they can just help balance you. And I think when I have a very, very close female friend who is not afraid to tell me when I'm out of line, and can give me a lot of balance and perspective. And that's actually been really useful in the last 5 years or so. Because she's sort of a little bit my sounding board of right, I'm probably taking this a bit too far now. Let's just take a step back. And that's really helpful, I think, because I also feel within, and I see it a lot in these sort of 20-year-olds, that mummy and daddy have bought them the beautiful lorry. They're riding the horses that cost 50 or 60 grand. They think they're brilliant and they think they're invincible, but tomorrow you could have a fall and never ride again. And that's what they don't get. And I think once you've had a couple of close shaves, you then start to think, oh, what if? What is my life if this bit was taken away? And that's a very healthy thing to think about.
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? It's getting that balance between a healthy understanding that any minute you could get injured and it could all change. And at the same time, though, if you're pushing to the top, you need to kind of put that out the back of your mind, because that's the last thing you want as you're, you know, headed round a full pelt round across country course. It's always about balance, isn't it?
It is. And you risk manage. You know, you need to be confident in your ability to make decisions. You need to train. You need to you never get rid of your weaknesses, do you? But you learn how to manage them, and you learn coping strategies, and you learn how to build your own physical and mental strength. So you risk manage it, really, don't you? I mean, there are riders who are gung-ho, and it does scare me to death when I see some of them. There's a very fine line between brilliant and crazy in our sport. But I think you have to be happy in your own skin as to slightly which side of the fence you are.
Okay, cool. So, so you love coaching. What is it that you love about the coaching element itself for you?
Light bulb moments. Obviously, every coach will say that, because if you can, somebody's been struggling with something or doesn't get a concept, and if you can either explain it in a way or give them an exercise where they find it out for themselves. I think that's such a powerful thing. And I think horsey people, because we are a little bit obsessive about our horses because it takes up all our time and money, it's a massive part of their life. So, you know, even if they are just doing pole work, they don't jump. I mean, I do a lot of work with them, and this has only really happened, I'd say, in the last 10 years. I do a lot of work with riders who are scared of jumping, or I do a lot of work with riders who have been destroyed by coaches who build too big, too complex, too soon. And I pride myself on the fact that I can then make them enjoy, not make them, that's the wrong word. I can facilitate them enjoying their jumping again, because I can get them feeling in control of the situation again, and I can get them understanding if they do XYZ, the result is ABC. You know, whereas a lot of the time, you know, a lot of not very good coaches, and let's face it, a lot of very good riders don't make good coaches because they don't understand why they're so good. But, you know, all their answer to everything is, well, just kick a bit harder. You know, and for somebody who's paralyzed with fear up top hanging onto the front end, that doesn't work. So for me, it's getting people's confidence, seeing them smile at the end of a lesson, seeing them work through things, but then be able to grab the positives. As a coach is a great feeling. It's a really good feeling.
Cool. And my licensed coaching program's out there. It's in its infancy and it's growing now. What would you say to people who want to learn about psychology for riders and when they're a coach? How much of a difference has that actually made, understanding psychology?
Huge difference. I mean, obviously you have to know the technical side of it. You have to know biomechanics of the horse and the rider, how they interact. You know, you have to know what is involved in competition, how to correct faults, when to recognize when the horse is lame and in pain. That comes up quite a lot. But ultimately, a lot of the time with riders, the only reason that they are not either progressing or enjoying or developing is the mental barriers in their brain. And let's face it, that goes across all walks of life: confidence in a job interview, going out dating, you know, dealing with conflict. If you are shying away from it in your brain, then you never actually learn how to deal with it. So just by opening people's minds up to thinking about how they're approaching things is such a powerful tool. You know, and then the greatest thing I think is when then I get, you know, long essays from people telling me about how they've got on competing, and I thought this and then I did this, and your voice was in my head and I made sure I concentrated on the rhythm and I sat up through the turn. And you know, that's brilliant, because then you're making such a positive impact to their happiness almost.
And what does that give you then, knowing that you've made an impact on someone else's happiness?
Oh, huge feeling of satisfaction, because actually, you know, it's a very powerful thing to be empathetic and to actually create a positive environment. Every now and again, okay, you know, stress levels will get too high, and I just had a nightmare with owners recently, and I did go and escape for a break for a few days to get away from horses, because I recognized that I wasn't going to do myself any favors by not removing myself from the situation and giving itself some perspective. But from the coaching point of view, I think it is great to be able to facilitate that in other people. But I also think you've got to make sure it goes up the chain and somebody else is helping facilitate it in you. And I think that's where a lot of coaches, it's a very lonely job, especially if you don't run yard, if you're a freelancer going around in your car. I do think a support network, which is a little bit what Centre 10 gave me, is really, really important, that you can phone somebody up, have a rant, or you can say, I'm stuck, what would you do? Because then I think you're not festering, for want of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's really interesting because the key part of my business that's developing right now is community, it's network. It is about exactly that. And anyone that's involved in that community and that network in any of the areas that you can get involved in it are massively now benefiting, not from me teaching them or coaching them or what have you alone at all, but from helping each other. And from the groups that they've formed within it, and you know, that opportunity to just send someone a quick message, because most of the time I'm really busy, like I'm really busy with all the other stuff going on, and but supporting each other is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I am lucky because I've got close friends who are also coaches, so I've always had a bit of support there. But sometimes having more senior coaches, if you like, is great, because they can sort of they can see the big picture quite often. I mean, I have worked with some people in the past that I've thought have been too closed in their mindset and that they haven't, actually thought about stuff. They've been almost a bit too simplistic. And believe you me, my coaching is very simple. But so I haven't gelled that well with them because they don't give a toss really. So I think I like working with people who do analyze stuff and who do think about the big picture long term.
Okay, so we've touched a few times now on this concept of owners. And it is something that I come across all the time. Loads of people I know that are great riders, really talented, fantastic, but they keep saying, I'm not going to catch a break until I have some owners of some fabulous horses that I can go and ride. And so often we explore it and realize there's more potential downfalls with owners than there is necessarily upsides. However, of course, there are upsides. So tell us a little bit about your experience with owners, your journey with them, because actually you've had owners for a very long time, haven't you?
I have since I was 18. Yeah, 30 years I've been dealing with owners. Was 17 actually. Jenny came into the picture. I think I've ridden a lot of very unorthodox horses for owners, and I think sometimes the overambitious youngsters, they'll sit on a horse and they'll think it's not good enough, or they'll take it to their elite podium potential coach and be told it's not good enough. But I've got one that you can buy for £100,000. I see that a hell of a lot. I think when you're starting out, you have to ride everything. You can get a little bit more selective as you get older, but I think sometimes you have to make sure you're going to get on with the person, regardless of the horse. Are you going to get on with the person that owns the horse? Are your goals and your ambitions aligned? Because sometimes that can cause conflict, and that's recently what's happened with me. Are your ethics, and actually it was an ethics and welfare thing more with me, are your ethics and your owner's ethics aligned? If they want to run the legs off their horse and that it's disposable and you're not that kind of rider, then don't ride for them. Equally, if you get somebody who you would like to train it in a certain way, you'd like to train with a certain person and they're very over controlling, that might not work for you. So I think when you're starting out, I think you have to be open to everything. I think you have to go and sit on everything. But I think you have to be very aware that the journey you want to go on with this person, because at the end of the day they are paying you as well, is aligned with what you want to do and what you are happy to do. That's the big thing I'd say.
And what would you say to people who are out there who want to get some owners to ride for them, especially with social media and things now? Like everyone is something or other eventing, something or other dressage.
Oh, that's my bugbear. Yeah, and then when you actually, I mean, I had a classic example. Somebody bought a horse off somebody else who advertises themselves as blah blah eventing. They sold the horse fraudulently. It was wrong. It had been medicated. It did have issues. The first time it came to me for a lesson, I just said that horse is wrong in its stifles. It's wrong behind. Look how it canters. Anyway, so as soon as they decided to approach this person under the law for commercial selling, oh no, I don't earn my living from horses. No, I'm not a professional rider. But you are marketing yourself as a professional rider all over social media. You are a professional rider. And that is a massive bugbear I have. You've got so-and-so eventing and they've got one horse at 90, which they struggle to get around every weekend. It does drive me mad, because I think you either are a pro, you are earning money from doing it, or you're not, you do it as a hobby.
Okay, yep, I totally agree with that. That's no. And the thing is that, like, I get that, and it's good to have a little rant every now and again because it spurs on conversation. I think a lot of people call themselves something dressage or something eventing because it's their Instagram or their Facebook page name or whatever, and they're showing their journey. And I think probably most of those people aren't really looking for owners for that exact reason, necessarily. I mean, who wouldn't want a free horse to ride? But it's not that, is it? It's not. Here's a free horse for you to ride. Off you go. It's not as simple as that, is it?
No, it's never as simple as that. And I mean, initially, I rode for nothing. I had a very good owner called Jenny Woofenden, and she had a horse that she wasn't getting around the cross country. I mean, the crux of the matter was the horse wasn't fit enough for a start. So I got that horse when I was 17, rode it for nothing. I paid for everything on it. I evented it under Jenny's name. I think I did the juniors program on that. I got it to 1 star, which is now 2 star. And then that died, unfortunately, broke his leg in the field. So Jenny bought me another one that had just been backed, and ironically that went on to become, that was advanced by the time it was 8 months, on to become my young rider's horse. And Jenny gave me a half share in that horse as a Christmas present. And then we had a deal that I think I rode 15 horses for her over the years, where I looked after them, I paid for them, she paid me nothing, she bought the horses, and then when I sold them I got half. So that was my original owner, if you like. And then obviously that spurred on, because people saw me riding the pebble horses, that then spurred on more interest, and I could actually start charging to ride. And now obviously it's commercial, but I think when you're starting out, I think you have to be open to any kind of idea, and obviously it depends on your individual circumstances of your funding. Can you afford to run somebody else's horse? What happens if it goes wrong? Get a blooming good contract. You know, that's what I say to people. Really make sure your paperwork is sorted, even if you're best mates, because stuff goes wrong. You know, who's liable if it breaks down? Who's liable for the vet's fees? Who's going to rehab it? Who's liable for the now drop in value? So, you know, you have to get those things in place before you do anything.
Okay. And what would your advice be if, okay, you are a professional, you may be a new to it, or you've come into it later on or something like that, and you actually are at the point where you've got good results, you know, you're proving yourself, you're bringing up young horses, bits, pieces, things like that. But actually, at the end of the day, to have a real quality horse that you can't, because often the case that people want owners is because they can't afford the lump sum
to buy the raw material.
To buy that, or they can and grow it up through the levels, but we know that takes time. And there's a lot of risk involved.
And also, you end up selling them to funds. You know, a lot of the time I've sold very good horses to keep funding the yard and keep going and run the lorry. And you know, you do quite often end up letting go of your favorite horse that you think will go on because it's yours. But equally, I think what people have to remember is when they get the owners, that the owners can dump them and go. So I think a lot of riders, when they're starting out, they almost have a sense of ownership over the horse that they ride for somebody else. You must never, ever, ever forget it's their horse. It's not your horse. And I think that's really important. So you have to be able to guard yourself emotionally if they do suddenly decide, Joe Bloggs next door, you know, they want to go on their lorry because it's flasher. Or maybe, you know, you're having a little bit of a confidence crisis and you have a run out, or you have a show jump down or something. You know, you do have to, I think, emotionally guard yourself, because we do all do this job because we love the horses. You know, and ultimately when you are putting your life in the hands of that horse, there's an emotional connection for most riders. For some there's not, but for most riders there is.
And so what would your advice be to someone if they're looking to that? Do you think it's worth doing, or actually do you think it's worth just bringing on your own horses and pulling them through the ranks? Or is it not as black and white as that?
No, it's not as black and white as that. It totally depends what funding you've got behind you. Yes, as a commercial rider, you know, you also, I think the other big thing is you do have to ride everything when you're starting out, even if you don't think it's talented, and even if you don't think that, you know, it's going to go anywhere. My young rider's horse that went advanced by the time it was 8 was an overgrown bog pony. So you have to give every horse a chance and train every horse as an individual. But I think you have to listen to your inner gut, whether you can get on with that person, you know, whether this is a long-term relationship or not.
And so, without giving us too much detail, are you able to give us some examples of perhaps when it hasn't quite worked, or something hasn't really been the way you wanted it to be?
Well, I had an interesting one. What was it? 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I rode 4 horses for this owner, and one of the horses had done a tendon injury last year, purely because they'd run it at 2 long format events too close together against my wishes. But I was basically given an ultimatum that I had to run it. So I ran it made my opinion clear, but still ran it. Anyway, the horse broke down. So it got rehabbed. Now, as far as I'm concerned, you don't event them the year after they break down. They have a year off. They go hacking, they do some dressage, you know, they have time. But I was being pushed and pushed and pushed to event this horse this year. Thank God lockdown saved the horse, because it actually bought it a little bit more time. But its first event back, because I didn't gallop it against the clock, I basically got dropped off the ride on 4 horses, one of which was a 5-year-old that had impeccable results and did the 4-year-old champs and had won 3 out of 5 events with me, and actually had won an event the day before I got dropped. But they ultimately, just as I came through the finish, he just said, I'll find another rider. And that was it. And that was very, very hard, because 2 of the horses I wasn't so attached to, but 2 of the horses I was very, very attached to. And it's very hard when somebody else is going out on those horses that you've done all the work on, and that's really quite hard. But I think you have to, as a rider, brace yourself that might happen, because in the real world it does. They're their horses, they can do what they like with them. I removed myself from the situation, gave myself a little break, and now it's like, well, do you know what, even if they came back and offered to pay me £100 a day to ride them, I wouldn't, because I'm not having somebody treat horses like that.
Yeah. So I think one thing that, and I know we've worked on it, is something called values. It's something that what is really important to you as a person, what are things that you live your life by, what's negotiable and what's not. And
happy horses is something I live my life by. So even though they're working hard, like all my best event horses live out at night, they go hacking, they have a lovely time, so they've got to be happy in their work. That is a huge thing. And then obviously the welfare issues of, if I feel a bit of heat in the leg, it doesn't do any fuss work that week, or it gets scanned before I make sure it's okay. Horses are not machines. I don't expect them to just run and run and run. But unfortunately other people do, especially if they've never competed themselves. They, pardon me, don't understand if you're saying, well, I don't think it should run, but it's sound. The vet said it's sound. Well, I don't think it should run. I think you do have to stick to your guns.
But you have to know what those guns are to stick to them, don't you? So I think if you're looking at venturing into owners or riding for others, or even venturing just in anything in life, quite frankly, you need to know what your values are. It's really important to know what is negotiable and what's not to you. Yeah.
And you also have to have a good network of people that will back you up. So in those situations, you can then turn to your mentor and say, right, this is happening. Can we just drop a hint in the next lesson when they're watching or something like that? You can be clever with it. And good vets that are practical, those kind of things. I think everything you do has to be a team decision. And that's the other thing. I think I see a lot of these young professionals who've got everything. They do work hard and they are incredibly talented. I think our generation of 20-somethings are amazing. I wish I had that coaching when I was younger and got to sit on horses like them, But I think you have to remember you're only as good as the team that surrounds you. So being nice to your staff and your suppliers and everybody else is really important, because you soon realise that if they let you down, the whole system falls down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, no one's an island, are they? And although you're the one out there on the horse that day, it's not you that got you there. And if you watch any interview of any top rider after Burghley, Badminton, Berlin, anything, they will always say thanks to my. Well, they don't always actually. They mostly.
They should if they're nice.
Say thanks to my team. It's not just me that got me here, because it isn't. It never is it? And that team is everything, isn't it? From health.
Absolutely.
Horse and rider health, mental health for horse and rider, physical health for horse and rider, skill set and all of that stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And so one of the other things that has been fascinating along your journey has been injury. Now, it's no surprise that you've done what you've done, you've got what you have, and you've had injuries along the way, because they are kind of part of the course sometimes, aren't they? To get out unscathed is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, not so much about the stories that got you the injuries, because as we know, when we're talking about injuries, trauma, or anything like that, if we hear someone tell that story, our brain logs it into the bank of things that might happen. And could actually make it worse. So without actually going into the full story of how it happened, tell us a little bit about, the things that have set you back along the way and what you've done to overcome them, more importantly.
I think, I broke quite a few bones when I was, sort of late teens, early 20s. Nothing desperately exciting, feet, wrists, ribs, tops of arms, that kind of thing. So stuff that you come back from pretty quickly. But then it was... God, what was it? 8 years ago, something like that. I can't remember. I blanked it now, obviously. I managed to do what's called a tibial plateau fracture. So basically, my kneecap dislocated, my femur came down and just totally obliterated top of my tibia. So I ended up, 11-hour surgery to reconstruct it, 2 weeks in hospital, flat on my back, not allowed to move. The most amazing pain I've ever felt in my life. And then 6 months of very, very intensive, very, very painful rehab, of which the doctors, the consultants were all sort of saying, well, it'll take you a year before you get back on a horse. We're not sure that you should ever be able to ride again because we don't think you'll get the function in your knee. You're going to end up having a knee replacement. You're probably going to never straighten your leg and you might limp for the rest of your life, all these lovely things. But I very much, I remember sitting in hospital Googling therapies, so Googling what I could do to make it better, things like oxygen therapy. And I did spend quite a lot of time down at Oaksey House at the jockey rehab place, and they were brilliant because you're never allowed to think you can't get back to riding there. And I did silly little things like straight away I was Googling, can I buy a cheap convertible automatic to swan around so I can get my crutches in and out? So I think I very much refused to believe that what the doctors were saying was true. And I just thought, well, no, come on now, if I work hard, I'll get back, I'll be all right. And I did, and it was a tough old road, but I did. But then I think a lot of that is perhaps a bit my upbringing. Mum and dad are very they get on with it. My dad's broken his neck, dislocated his shoulder because he kite surfs because he's crazy. So I think there's an element in our family that you get injured, everybody laughs at you, and then you just get on and rehab it and get on with it. So that was my I never thought for a minute I wouldn't get back to it, but I did work bloody hard to get back to it.
And so having that, there's that single-mindedness again, isn't it, coming in, that actually, that's what you're going to do and that's what you're going to get back to. So that was your knee. Yeah. And then you did something to, didn't you? I think the story that I love is that
I only did a collarbone break. Everyone's broken collarbones. I broke both of mine. Yeah, the funny thing yeah, most inventors have broke the collarbone.
But then I haven't been to 3-star, 4-star, that's why.
Oh no, I managed to do a somersault with a little horse and knock myself out in the process. And then it was in lots of pieces. So they were trying to make me just leave it to mend because that's what they tend to do. And I absolutely refused. And I made them put metal in it so I could, and I was back riding within 10 days. And then as soon as my 21-day ban, because I got knocked out, was up, I was competing again.
But I know the interesting part about that story is what it then got you thinking about from, because there's the riders you learn at different things as to what you can have to support your body to help you get through, wasn't it?
Yeah, no. So I was put in touch with a very, very interesting lady, Barbara Thompson, who developed a rider, a clavy brace, it was called. So this was a bit of kit that she developed because she broke her collarbone and there was nothing out there that would help her sort of keep it together. So she developed this big kit and I went and got fitted with one. So when I started riding again, post-surgery, I was strapped up in this thing. But it was a bit like a blooming 3 pulls and 2 submissions to get in the damn thing. It was so complicated. So, but I love the concept of it for improving posture because it worked very much through engaging your core. It's a bit like a corset. It works by pulling your shoulder blades back. So it's great for scapular dyskinesis and things like that. So I then went to Barbara and we worked together. And I mean, this has been ongoing sort of about 3 years, this project. And we developed the rider posture gilet. And it's absolutely brilliant bit of kit. And I sort of have all fittings here and I promote it with people. And the thing that always makes me laugh is the minute anybody breaks the collarbone and puts it on Facebook, I get tagged in it straight away. I'm like collarbone guru now. So that was an interesting thing, out of adversity and all that. So yeah, Barbara and I now work together. And again, it's a little bit, I think my ear's about to die in a minute. It's a little bit towards my long-term retirement plan that hopefully I'll get something out of that financially going on.
Yeah, okay. If you need to plug your ear in or swap or anything, that's absolutely fine. Go for it.
I might go onto the mic. It's bubbling at me. Let me put
that's fine.
Give me 2 minutes and I'll change ears.
I'll give you 2 moments to do it. I'll fill it with something. Okay, so just to recap on some of the things we've been talking about then. We have been chatting about values and how important values are to know what it is that's really important to you in life, what are your negotiables, what are your non-negotiables, and that really helps with adversity. It really helps with overcoming challenges. It really helps you to understand what the bigger picture is for you. And then also, you know, as a coach, as a rider, not being insular, making sure that you have a team around you that you can call upon that have different opinions, different views, probably the same kind of values as well, always helps as well, and calling on that team. And so what would you say then that would be some advice to anyone who's thinking about, you know, becoming a professional rider? Maybe they're young, or maybe they're thinking about leaving a job to do it, something, or about becoming a professional coach, you know, coming into the equine world with a very different view to, you know, it's not just about mucking out. It's not just about riding a few horses. There's so much more to it nowadays, isn't it? It really is a professional sport.
Yeah, there is. And I mean, it's dealing with people is such a massive part of our sport. From the point of view of riders, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Think what else can you do as well as the riding. So quite often I'll advise riders, go and get a coaching qualification. You know, you might not desperately love coaching now, but it's a very good fallback, and you probably will learn to love it when you're a little bit older and you start to interact with people more and you're less single-minded about I've got to go and ride at this level. So yeah, definitely having a fallback is very, very important. I think if people are going to become coaches, they have to expose themselves to as many different types of coaches and different angles of how to coach as they can. I've done so many courses of things, and one I'm quite excited about this year is I'm doing the Andy Thomas Test T 2-day coaching training, which he's only accepted 12 coaches in the country to do, and I've managed to get myself on that. So then I joke with my clients.
Andy's at my yard today.
Is he? Oh, bless
He's actually there today doing a clinic. Yeah, Will. Say hi later.
Well, yeah, no. So I'm quite excited about that, because I am joking with my customers now. Not only can I get in your head, I can bend your body. You know, because I think you just, from the riding and from the coaching point of view, never, ever, ever stop learning. Never think you're there. And this is any great sportsman, anybody in any discipline. They will never stop learning, and they'll never stop trying different things. Whereas I deal with, you know, a few people who are very closed mindset and are very much like, well, I'm brilliant because I've ridden at this level. I know everything. You know, don't ever be like that. Stay very open to learning all the time.
And what does that bring you when you stay open to learning all the time? What would you say that has done for you in life, in your career?
Well, from a selfish point of view, it motivates and excites me, because again, the Groundhog Day thing, I don't want to live in Groundhog Day. And I think whenever you come across something that you find difficult as a rider or a coach, you go and find a solution. You know, you see it as a challenge that you have to develop yourself and find a solution. Whereas there's a lot of big fish in little ponds that sort of get to a certain level and don't push themselves because their ego can't cope with thinking they might not know everything. And I do think at the lower level of coaching, you see that quite a lot. I think you see a lot of coaches who did their qualifications when they were very young, and they actually haven't really developed that much more, which I think is really sad, because I think, you know, it doesn't matter what you do for a living, you should be constantly seeking to improve, to assess, you know, and to redirect if necessary.
Yeah, and I love that. And in fact, Clive Milkins and I, he's an international para coach. We did a Q&A recently, and I was lucky enough to be on a 3-day camp where he was coaching, and he's a para coach. So of course his mindset is don't look at what you can't do, look at what you can, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Absolutely.
But we were having some great conversations about ego in coaching and where it doesn't have a place. Very
ego does not have a place. No,
it doesn't.
And I think
it's not about you as a coach, is it?
No, and it's not about how you've ridden. It's not about what level you've ridden to. And I see a lot of these celebrity clinics where people go, and I mean, my clients, you know, I send them off to coach with anybody with pleasure and say to them, please feed back to me what they said, because I might learn something from it too. You know, and if they said something you don't get, let's discuss it, because I might be able to interpret it for you, or I might be able to say, well, do you know what, that won't work for you and your horse. You know, there's a certain young male rider who's very good on social media, who he does celebrity clinics for like 85 quid or something, and you're in a group of 4, And every single person I know that's been and done them has come back and gone, well, that was crap. All he did was just tell me which fences to jump.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's a lot of that goes on. So I think when you're in that coaching arena, you know, your phone is off, you are totally focused on that person. The session is about that person and their horse. It is nothing to do with you. You are just facilitating their journey, and you are sort of nudging them in the right direction so they can find solutions.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. And I wish more coaches had that exact ethos, which is very much the ethos that I am hopefully going to instill in a lot of coaches through my program and things as well, is that that's what it's about. It's about facilitating a journey. And in actual fact, it's interesting what you say. So you can be a great rider, but that doesn't necessarily mean you know what those skills are that you're using together, because they're what we call unconscious competence. You don't know what you're doing. Like, you know what you do, but you can't work out how to
couldn't explain it.
No, exactly, because it's unconscious. You're really good at it, but you don't know how. And but actually some great coaches are the ones who are only a few steps ahead potentially, because the learning's more broad. Now, obviously, like you say, you need technical knowledge, you need understanding. Like, you don't want to be coaching at a level that you don't know the skill that's required to get there. But because you're a great coach and you're facilitating learning, actually it can happen that way.
Yeah. And if you've struggled with stuff, you know, I mean, we do talk a lot about sort of when I'm working with clients, if they're struggling with stuff, you know, I mean, the one thing I remember being completely useless at when I was younger was canter. I mean, I went to my first 3-star completely unable to canter on the wrong leg. Intentionally, I could canter on the wrong leg unintentionally.
Of course.
But you know, it's one of those things that, you know what, sometimes it's not a straight journey, and sometimes there are mental blocks or physical blocks, and you've got to work out which is it a bit of both. You know, have you had an injury on a hip? Are you tight on one hip? Does the physio need to see you? Are you sitting wonky? You know, is it that just you had a horse that used to freak out in that rain and you've taken it across to your next horse? You know, there's so many different levels that stuff can hold us back with, but until we shine a spotlight onto potentially why is that happening, we can't find solutions.
Yeah. And so you and I have done stuff together. What would you say has been most beneficial about having mindset coaching and you know, the sort of psychology element added into what you do in your riding? And what would you say to other people that are thinking about it but aren't really sure if it's, you know, really what they need? They'd rather spend the money on a new saddle.
I know. I think the thing is it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, you can never get away from your own brain. So it's the one thing we carry with us all the time. You know, you can change your clothes, you can change your lorry, you can change your house, your husband, whatever you want to do, but you can't change your own brain. So if you're not happy in your own skin, there's only you that can do something about it. And I think sometimes very overly ambitious people are unhappy. There's something they're chasing that they think that it will make them happy, but actually it won't, because it's the, you know, what you tend to find with people like that is once they get that goal, they then chase the next goal. And it's quite interesting. One of our world's #1 male riders, English rider, I've had long conversations with him about this actually, and you know, a win, once the win it means everything when he's chasing it, and once he's got it, it doesn't mean anything, because then it's on to the next win. And that's quite a sad, lonely place to be in, really. So I think dealing with your demons a bit, I mean, the chimp paradox is something that all riders that come to me with any kind of, you know, hang up psychological issues, which we all have, most of them I'll say, go and read the chimp paradox, because I think that's such a good thing about understanding your own brain and when you're almost self-sabotaging.
Yeah, definitely. And actually it's again, another interesting, life's all about balance, isn't it? It's about being motivated towards a goal, but understanding the impact of that goal and things as well. And, you know, so many people I work with don't realize they keep moving the goalposts. So they never actually feel they've achieved anything, even though they've achieved 4 of the goals they did have. They haven't realized it because it's never quite good enough. But in some ways it keeps them motivated.
Well, exactly. And it's a good thing to set those goals, and it's a good thing to want to develop and move. But I think you have to reflect. You have to take the time to reflect, to think, well, okay, that's where I was and this is where I am now. And this is where, for some people, things like journaling works really well for them. You know, so they can just see the journey, step back and see the journey that they've gone through. personally for me, that doesn't really work. But it's definitely something I think that you have to acknowledge the steps that you're taking, to be able to say, well, yes, I've got to here and here. And it might even be that actually, do you know what, that was your goal, and you get halfway there and you go, I'm really not enjoying this, and why was it such a big thing to me? And then you sort of adjust a little bit. It's like me with my, I desperately want to ride at Badminton of Burley. Well, do you know what, I've got older and I don't. And I've sort of had to make peace with myself, because I always used to beat myself up that I wasn't a very good rider because I never got there. But actually, there's a place for everybody, and I know where I'm good. I mean, I jokingly call myself a pre-novice princess because I can take most horses out and win a pre-novice. But you know what? If that's what I'm good at, do it. Produce nice horses, let people buy them, have a lovely time with them. That's quite a nice thing to be doing.
I think it's really good to know your strength. I think a pre-novice princess is a wonderful thing.
I'm a pre-novice princess.
And it's very interesting what you say about having to make peace with it. So a lot of people have ambition early on about what they want to achieve, and life comes in different ways, or they've made decisions to make different, choices, or something happens that means they can't, or what have you. And it is about making peace with the fact that you might have set that goal once, but you don't have to be beholden to it now. You can change them. Really, it's fine.
No,
again, knowing what's really important to you, and that changes as well. Is fine.
And
it's your choice.
Your comfort zone changes. Sometimes you can be brave as a lion and you can feel like you're invincible. Other times there might have been a few things that have gone on completely unrelated to horses, but they niggle away. And I think one thing I have learned is the impact that your whole life has on your riding psyche. And I mean, I can be professional enough to block stuff out to a certain level, but at the end of the day, I'm human. So, if stuff is really affecting you, it might affect your riding. And to actually just go, well, okay, well, let's go away and deal with the thing that's affecting me, rather than beating yourself up that you're not getting the results you perhaps should be. So I think big picture thinking is something I've developed over the years. And that's something I do try and impart into people, because a lot of the time, you'll be chatting to a client before a lesson, and they'll confide something in you that's going on in their life, and you say to them, well, do you know what, just cut yourself some slack. I've got a very good client whose mum's dying, and she said, Tina, I don't think I should compete this weekend. And I said, well, don't then, just withdraw. Your mum's your mum. You've got to spend time with her, and if it goes wrong, you're going to catastrophize it. So just cut yourself some slack and say, do you know what, I'm not in the right headspace to compete, so I'm not. And the minute I gave her permission to make that decision, it was like a massive relief. Whereas the old me in my 20s would have been, we paid the entry fee, what are you on back, get on with it.
Yeah, exactly. No, completely. And we do think that we can compartmentalize, but we can't. The brain does not compartmentalize. It's all affecting everything else. And most people that come to me thinking that they're going to get some kind of clever visualization techniques or tools and tips to do just before they go riding that's going to get them in the right place to go out and do their best. Yeah, we can do that, but most of the time we end up working on exactly what you just talked about there. Because really that's what it's all about. It's all about, because it's going to impact you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating. We've covered so many different topics, Tina, as I knew that we would. Is there anything that you want to add or say or just sum up to anyone who's listening?
No, I don't think so. I think, anybody who's going through any difficulties at the moment, one day they'll become hindsight and you'll have learned from them. Sort of sometimes in the moment you can feel like there isn't a way out, or there's not a solution, there's not a way forward, but there always is. Everything's always yesterday's news at some point. But I think the self-development for anybody that's doing this job is so important, both as a rider and as a coach, just to keep you motivated. It's a good thing to keep moving forward and changing your goals and setting new goals. That's what life's all about. And we all have this. I think sometimes this goal setting thing can be a bit too finite. So I think, you never stop setting goals till you hit the grave, really. So, you can just keep adapting through life.
Mega, I love that. So it's all about adapting, being flexible and moving about, but having an idea and a sense of what you want. And it's okay to change that. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and hitting your grave with lots of great memories. That's the other thing.
Yes, exactly. What is it they say? It's not about arriving perfectly preserved. It's about sliding into it,
kicking and screaming, having a laugh.
That's it. I'm thinking, what a ride. So there we go. Cool. Okay. Well, Tina, if people want to get hold of you, I know someone said that they're interested in the test stuff, and I think that they say you're
I can't
local.
see the chat.
No, you can't. I'm telling you what they said.
Okay, right.
That's the only sort of question or so that we've had really come through from anyone today. But obviously, people can put questions in under this video on socials and post any through the podcast as well. But
yeah.
So you're based in Newark,
Newark in Nottinghamshire.
Newark in Nottingham. I always get the two muddled up, but whenever I come see you, I do end up in the right place, so that's okay.
Yeah, you do.
So if anyone wants to train with you, talk to you, get your advice, any thoughts, learn more about the Andy Thomas stuff, anything like that, how do they get a hold of you?
So have a look on our website. It's Tinderbox Sports Horses. All my contact details are on there, email, mobile number, everything that we do, everything that we offer is on there, because we do, like, as I say, lorry hire, we've got a TheraPlate that we hire, all that kind of thing. So yeah, have a look on there, and then if you want to give me a call and we'll have a chat. Cool.
And your Facebook is
Tinderbox Sport Horses again.
Super. So if they want to have a look in there and follow you
there. Yeah, I am on Insta. I'm getting better at using it. It's my age. Cool. But yeah, no, they can contact me through Insta, but to be fair, Facebook I check more often.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Tina. It's been really inspiring, loads of great advice, loads of, fantastic things for people to go away and think about as well. So thank you so much with whatever your future is going to be, whatever you choose.
Thank you very much. Lovely to speak to you again.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.